Hey everyone, welcome back to Teach, Run, Learn, and we are going to get into our second episode of Teacher Take Abbott Elementary. For this episode, we are going to be focusing on Season 1, Episode 2. And so if you haven't watched the show, I'm going to do my best to not give any spoilers, but sometimes they just naturally come out in the conversations. And I'm going to try not to do any spoilers. I do have a question at the end for anyone that wants to answer it. And then we'll just kind of see how the conversation goes. Again, I'm not sponsored or paid or anything by ABC or Abbott Elementary or any of those networks that have connections. And I just am doing this for fun because I think this is a great show. If you're a teacher, even if you're not, I think there's some humility in it, and there's also some real life situations that come up out of this. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so again, we are looking at season 1, episode 2 today. And so for our bell ringer warm up, I'm just going to kind of catch you up on what goes on in this episode. And for today, I felt like I was able to pick a theme. And the theme I went with was the work-life balance of a teacher, because so when we're looking at this episode, there is some drama going on for Janine Teagues, the second grade teacher we met in the last episode, and she's like probably I think she's one of the teachers that they focus on more, but they focus on all of them really well. So Miss Teagues is experiencing some stress from home, which we can all relate to as teachers. And the seasoned teachers do say, you need to leave that stuff at the door, blah, blah, blah. But I know that's easier said than done. And those of us in the profession, I feel like, will relate to this. But they say, leave it at home, but she's not able to. And it turns into trying to fix school problems that are not really in her problem to fix. And so she continues to try to fix these things. And it makes things worse at the school. It actually causes a power outage. It's a episode where it's like 90 degrees where they're at, and the air conditioning stops working and all these things. So it just kind of, one problem after another becomes bigger, and it is a result of some ways in what Janine Teagues does, because she's trying not to focus on her home life, but it sounds like she really should do this. Anyways, so that is our bell ringer. I feel like I kind of did a nice job going over the gloss of it. And I feel like I want to spend some more time today on the teacher take part of it, because I do think this is something that's not talked about enough. And the work-life balance is a real thing. And I'm going to I am going to jump a little bit back and forth between the bell ringer and the teacher take, because I think there are some common things that'll just come up and it'll be okay. We're just going to make it work. And so when we're talking about the teacher take and the work-life balance, Janine has this boyfriend that she's been with for a very long time, and he's not a teacher. I'm just going to call it what it is. I think he is lazy, and I don't know. I tried to understand what she sees in him, but as we go through the first couple seasons, I feel for her, and I also think I am married to someone who is not a teacher too. And I do think that in any relationship where you're with someone that's not a teacher, there is like a grace period to try to explain to them teaching, but not necessarily explain, but have them try to understand the teacher's perspective. But it's easier said than done. And if you don't have the right partner at home, that can create a lot of stress at school, because especially your first couple of years, you're in your classroom so much. You are working when you come home. And I'm sure there are first year teachers that have found that perfect balance to not have to do that. But my experience was I had to get to school super early, and I would stay later. And then on the weekends, I actually worked a second job for so many years. I waited tables. And so there was just, you're trying to squeeze a lot of work into pockets of time, and it almost consumes you. So this is where, like, having my husband now, we weren't married at the time, but having him kind of balance me and pull me out of that at times was nice. But it was also hard because he didn't always understand the things that had to happen behind the scenes. It's the work you have to bring home sometimes is not something other people are used to. So it's hard to explain. And obviously it is a choice to bring that home, but I think as a first year teacher, you feel like you're drowning. And I definitely felt that. And so having a lot of like just the time commitment, and that wasn't like a full issue for Janine, but I could see that there probably was, it just wasn't talked about as much in the story. However, the stress at home from her, I'm just gonna call him a lazy boyfriend, from her lazy boyfriend, was not helping her, because she was in the end carrying all the weight at home as well as trying to take on things at school because she didn't, almost like she didn't have control. And if you watch this episode, I think you'll understand a little bit differently, but I think that you try your best to leave stuff at the door, but that's not always possible. And I think any human knows that, because there are certain situations that take up more time than others. And in Janine's case, her colleagues are lightly asking about like what's going on, but there is like a line obviously of what you talk about, especially when you're just getting to know people. Like this is Janine's second year of teaching, so she's been with these teachers for a long time, for a year, you know each other pretty well, but you're still kind of careful with what you share. But also I could see where like she probably didn't want to share, because when she does start to talk about him, the seasoned teachers who are parents that have kids really start to encourage her to walk away from this relationship. And overall, I think she definitely struggled to find the work-life balance in this episode, because she was like busying her mind. And then one of the big things that kind of got out to me was when her boyfriend dropped her off. They had a shared car. I'm assuming it was Janine's car, but he had to take it to go somewhere. And he was like talking about how hungry he was. So she like gave him her breakfast sandwich. And then she went in, and so she went to work without eating all day. But because of the heat, she ended up getting so sick, she passed out at some point. And so it's just kind of one of those things where she didn't really take care of her own needs, and that's concerning. Okay. So the other big component of this episode, or part of this episode, was one of the hallways lights kept going out. There was like a switch or something was off, and this is like one of the things that Janine tried to fix too, and it like turned the power off in the whole school essentially, or the air conditioning. And like it was just a really crazy comedic part of the episode. And anyways, they turn off the lights break in this part of the hallway because Janine tries to fix it, even though the custodian like tells her not to. But the principal, she says, we need to get somebody in here from the city to fix this. And the principal's like, absolutely not. They're not going to come do anything right now. Like, it's not to fix. And to me, when it comes to like a classroom connection, this was really about a barrier to safety and funds, because I think especially like those of us that work in I think every school building's different, but the funding becomes a real issue when your schools are breaking down to the point where they're too much to fix, or there's no funds to fix them, and so you can't upkeep them, and it makes the problem worse. But I do think like a hallway where the electricity is turning it on and off just sounds like a fire hazard to me, because I don't know, I'm not an electrician, but in my experience, it's very hard to, it just sounds unsafe. In my experience, it's very hard to keep teaching through that. And I feel like it's important to kind of say. And I noticed with Janine, she tried to do the best and it didn't work out. But I feel like this can be a barrier a lot of times when there's a difference between a school that your kid feels comfortable in and a school that you don't feel safe with them. And I feel like I've kind of been in, I taught in a few different districts at this, well, 2 different districts, but that's, anyways, I've taught in these districts, and in these districts, one district kept their buildings up really well, and the other one is trying, but again, the more older the buildings are, the more expensive they are to fix sometimes, and sometimes it's not just an easy fix, it's buying parts from wherever and making it, or getting parts from old buildings. And that's kind of the sense I feel with the Abbott Elementary building. It's kind of like an older rundown. There's not a lot you can do to fix it because it costs a fortune, or because some of the things it's not fixable because they don't have the parts or the whatever. And so I think that it's harder to be, if you're not comfortable in a school, the lights are going out or it's too high, I really wonder how kids learn. Because I always say to myself, like, I do teach in a building, in a school that has no air. And I live in Michigan. So most of the time it's not too bad. But we can have those Michigan summers where it's hot and 90 degrees until the end of October. Sometimes it's gone as late as November. Or you get those really weird warm days in November. And then we've also heated up in March and April. And for a teacher in March and April, that's prime testing month, especially for like the state tests and stuff like that. Those usually start at the beginning of April, but you're getting ready for them all of March. And if it's hot and uncomfortable or too cold and uncomfortable, I really struggle to understand how we can expect kids to learn, because you can't tell me that the fine fancy school down the street, and I'm just making up I'm not signaling out any school around where I teach, those of you that are watching this that know who I am, but the fancy schools down the street that have air, that have heat, that have all these upkept like new fancy buildings, you can't tell me that those testing environments are two equal parts when it's 90 degrees or too cold and you're having a kid take a test in the heat, or there's no air conditioning, or the heat is broken, it's cold, versus in a school that those things are working properly. And to me, that I feel like that's where I feel like the barrier comes in, because how can we assess kids like that? So that's just my little, I don't want to get on a full soapbox about it. If you do have stuff to share, feel free to comment below. The other part I wanted to talk, so our teacher's lounge portion, I just had to acknowledge. So first thing in the morning in this episode, they all started and they get in to watch some news show. First off, I thought it was hilarious that they had a TV in the teacher lounge. It is a really like older TV. It's not like a fancy one, but it did look like they either had cable or some like antenna something TV where they could watch the local news. I don't know if I couldn't tell, but I just cracked up because the fact that they have time in the morning, or maybe they just make the time. I know it's a TV show, but I'm sure maybe there are districts, I don't know, that do this where they gather in the teacher's lounge and hang out. I do remember like being a kid and seeing my teachers, and like you walked past the teacher's lounge to get to your classroom or whatever, and you could see them all hanging out in there. There was like always a pot of coffee and whatever. There was a stove at one point too. I remember we don't have those anymore in the teacher's lounge, but there was a stove in this one at one point. And I remember just seeing them gather. But in Abbott Elementary, they don't have like a stove or anything, but they do have like a coffee pot and all kinds of like different things in there. You kind of see a fridge. And I just thought it was funny that they were all gathered into the teacher's lounge to watch this TV show. I thought that would be kind of cute, though, to have like something to do in the morning, to kind of have a Zen moment. And then the other part, that this didn't really have to do with the teacher's lounge, but this part just cracked me up. There's a student that is coming in late, and the student's former teacher, the kindergarten, he's a first grader, and his kindergarten teacher helps this teacher to know how to talk to his mom. And they end up at a nail salon where the mom is at during their lunch hour. But I was cracking up because I'm thinking, at what point, what teacher has time to go get their nails done at lunch? Like, how long is their lunch period? Because and where are these kids? Because and I'm sure other people are different, but I have a 30-minute lunch. And by the time I drop the kids off and go to the bathroom and stuff, it's like 5 minutes to eat and go pick them back up and then take them to recess. But I just, like a nail appointment for those of us that get our nails done is like 45 minutes to an hour minimum. So I just thought that was hilarious. I mean, I guess if you have that long of a lunch and you're a teacher, let me know. I'm just like, I just laughed, but like I spend a lot of time. I know many of us, you're calling a parent or you're doing something for your personal self. I know some teachers leave. Some teachers leave to go get lunch, which would stress me out. Like the 30-minute, no. There's trains by my school and the train drive, no, too stressful. So I thought that was funny. Like, you went to get your nails done on lunch. Okay, and then I did add in a new thing, which is going to be our exit ticket. I labeled our question. I might have done, I forgot. Okay, we're just learning as we go, and I want this to be like fun and authentic. So here we go. So I wrote my stuff down. Our exit ticket today is, how do you keep the work-life balance? Because I think this was the big topic of this episode. And I'm curious, how do you keep your work-life balance? And if you want to comment on any of the other stuff I talked about today, feel free. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you come back next time. Bye.